I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes. I have 40 slides. I will talk as quickly and as efficiently as possible. If it goes too fast, you can reach me, of course, at my email and all that kind of stuff. But I'll try to get as much in as we can right now, just kind of for the sake of edification, and also to provide a bit of a counter-argument, perhaps, to some of the incredible enthusiasm that goes around when we talk about esports. I'll start with a slide that is basically inspired by Manny. You saw him earlier. Esports is an interesting phenomenon. Competitive gaming is an interesting phenomenon because it really gets to the heart of a lot of the experience that audiences have when it comes to interactive entertainment, when it comes to kind of this generation of gamers that has been hiding in basements at parents' houses their entire life, and suddenly they're sort of cast into the mainstream on a stage, right? My personal version of that is, I did a PhD on video games, and I built a company around it. And for the last 15 years or so, I've been analyzing it. It's a lot of fun, but I've also been defending it and saying, like, is this a thing? Is games a thing now? Are gamers a relevant consumer audience? Who are they? What do they do? Aren't they just little boys playing crazy violent games covered in Cheeto dust, as the legend goes? And in fact, no, they're actually just humans like the rest of us. They just like things that are digital as opposed to offline or analog. So one example of where esports lives today, and sort of the punchline of my 20 minutes here, is that what it really matters when it comes to the branding, marketing, advertising opportunity for esports is authenticity, right? And so Manny brought this up really well in one of his recent articles. He says, look, on the one side, you have E-League that's doing a phenomenal job bringing this into the mainstream, having a conversation with executives and all the sort of senior people that are trying to wrap their heads around it. The amount of people that they reach within the demographic 18 to 34-year-old is actually less than Evo, which is, and that's Manny's quote then, they have folding chairs on the stage, much lower production values, but that's really what matters to this audience, right? They don't really care about sort of the big setup, the big sort of capital expense about it. They want to see their heroes, they want to play the game, they want to be part of it, and they want to be seen. And so that's the difference, and that's sort of the punchline for this audience then. I'll walk you through some of the numbers. Here's a picture of me. Super exciting. The way we look at it is really sort of in a traditional sense of like, well, okay, people spend a bunch of time watching this, then they spend a bunch of time and they play it, and then of course there's a purchase in the end. They make in-app purchases, they buy a game that they've seen, they download it, but they also buy other stuff, of course, right? They buy technology, they buy hardware, they buy fancy mouse pads, custom chairs, as well as other verticals, CPG, automotive, finance, and so on. So we try to track all of those across the spectrum to kind of measure it all out. And the way we do that, just to kind of give you a background and as where our data mindset lives, is we of course have all of the viewership out there across channels. We then match it with monthly active user base. We collect all this data on about 80 million or so digital gamers. They're like, well, what's the session length? How many logins? What type of games? And so on. And then we see conversion rates and spending as well. What did you buy? Was it a shiny unicorn, or was it a flaming sword, or both? And did you get it at a sale, or did you just buy it sort of off the cuff? So those are sort of the KPIs and metrics that we look at. Happy to tell you more about it. For now, so these are some of the companies we work with. Here's what you need to know with regards to our esports methodology. Esports is kind of a big ecosystem of lots of different moving parts and companies. So our approach very simply has been to talk to all of the companies in the space. We work with the teams where we get some of the streaming data, get a sense of who do they care about. What is the difference between the number 1 and the number 2 player on the roster for a particular team? What's the difference in social media followers? What's the difference in the turnout for these people? And of course, that's also their leverage and their clout when it comes to negotiating contracts. Same thing then for platforms, Twitch, Facebook, trying to get in on this, YouTube as well. What are the unique viewership numbers look like, et cetera. Publishers, they want to know, of course, well, what's the session length? So we've seen Peter Moore talk about this repeatedly, either publicly at conferences as well as during earnings reports for Electronic Arts, saying, ever since we started this FIFA thing, people have been spending 5 hours a week more playing our games. So that's interesting data points that kind of feed into the retention, and retention obviously feeds into monetization. And then, of course, the classics, consumer data, we look at what people actually spend, not just in the game, but also around it in terms of merchandise, ticket sales, and so on. So we combine all that, and then we bring that all together into a conversation about the esports industry. So this is a common picture nowadays. Over the last 18 months, everybody's been talking about how big everything is. And big is good, right? Big is, tells us that it's important, and it really sort of is what you would expect there to happen, and the nature of the rhetoric would be this way at the beginning of an industry. And so what I want to present to you guys a little bit this morning is to kind of provide somewhat of a counterweight to all of the enthusiasm. So if we look at the overall opportunity, when we look at who's out there, who's doing what, who cares about esports in terms of the consumer side, we place esports in a larger universe, right? So people don't just watch competitive games, they also watch YouTube videos about how to get through a level. They also watch walkthroughs, they watch live streams, but they also watch video on demand. And so that entire universe we define as gaming video content, and it has today an audience of about 1.1 billion unique viewers worldwide. This is across devices, obviously. If you then look at the esports component, roughly 1 in 4 of those people watches regularly live streaming. And that then breaks out between 2 categories that are most interesting here. The people that watch but don't play, and the people that watch and play. And what's interesting about it is combined, those numbers are bigger than the actual playing audience, right? So traditionally, people would only be interested if they were buying the games and playing the games, but now we can reach a much larger universe, about 234 million people worldwide that fit in both of those categories. So that's the total addressable market according to our indicators this year. So that's cool. So now we have all these people sitting there waiting for us to serve them content. So people are placing bets, right, in the sort of old school, homey way of saying, well, let's see how that works out. And so to kind of understand that, and for those of you who don't know me, I also wear a hat where I teach a class at a business school in New York, and that's where we look at the business models for these things. So I'm going to walk you through 5 stages of the esports industry today, and kind of get a sense of like where things are, how they evolve. It's going to be light, don't worry about it. There's no need to take notes. But what's going to happen is I'm just going to give you sort of a sense of where we are in the industry to kind of broaden the perspective on how we define the opportunity here. So currently, we're in stage 2. The first stage here was very much a sort of early days, turn of the century. People were coming online. I remember in 2002, when I was just a wee little baby analyst, I was sitting in Chinatown in New York, playing, with all these other kids and boys and girls, in this underground internet cafe, and we were playing Counter-Strike, and it was a lot of good fun. And of course, naturally from that behavior, what follows is that people want to measure against themselves. They want to sort of compete, and they want to say, well, I'm better than you, consistently so, and I'm the champion of whatever local neighborhood. And so that behavior is not new, right? That's not something that we haven't seen before. And it really reached a pinnacle, especially in Asia and Korea, where around 2007, 2008, the total budget of marketing and advertising dollars that went into it was about $250 million. Very much, of course, based on the 2 channels that you had dedicated to 24-hour-a-day streams of people playing competitively. Ultimately, of course, then that tanked entirely. This is what you have to think of what the early days looked like. It's a bit of a, bar picture here, but so the idea is very much that after its success in Korea, it died, right? It was very much so that this is the moment when the iPhone comes out, people starting to move to mobile, it totally just decimated that industry, and you have that sort of valley of death, as consultants might want to call it. But it's really, that's the moment when, it was the question that a lot of people were asking themselves, is Korea the shape of things to come, or is that some kind of a statistical outlier? Is that some kind of weird anomaly, and should we just walk away from it? So there was a lot of confusion around it. Some very insightful people, ESL, MLG, et cetera, they said, no, this is the thing, we're going to invest in it. And so they've been at it for 10 years, trying to build this up. So you see that kind of come up. It's still very amateurish. It's still very sort of low stakes, small things all around. But it slowly starts to build up. This is at the same time also that moment when consumer interest and behavior starts to change fundamentally. So if I've been defending games for the last 15 years, very much so, the conversation usually goes around, as grown-ups like big numbers, saying, well, look, mom and dad, the reason that I should pursue this as a career is because it's actually bigger than traditional media industries. When we look at the US, the last 10 years in terms of annual growth rate, compound annual growth rate, and total spending, video games and interactive is the 3rd largest category, right behind cable TV and broadcast, right? So all of a sudden, and we've heard this before, where ticket sales and box office sales are less now, but just fundamentally, consumers really are drawn by interactive entertainment, and so that's a sort of larger current in which esports emerges. And that's good. That's great. Then all of a sudden, we have this popularization. We start to see a lot of investment coming in from companies saying, like, we need to spend more money here. And so over the last couple of years, I've been spending a lot of time explaining to journalists that esports didn't just happen overnight. It's been around for a long time. But this is really the moment when we start to see this sort of enthusiasm for the industry. And that's a wonderful thing. The problem with that moment, right, in this sort of stage that we're currently at, is that everybody thinks that they invent sex. Every generation comes at these conversations thinking, oh, it's new, all the rules are out the window, and we're going to just do this entirely differently. And not so much, right? So what happens fundamentally, of course, is that people want to explain this to their senior executive boss who has to sign off on a big budget, and so that's where a lot of the sort of hand-holding comes in very quickly. So, for instance, the logic in most of those conversations, as we have them in New York with some ad agencies and media networks, is like, oh, look, people are moving away from traditional media, traditional channels. Traditional sports looks like this. The average age for some of these traditional sports, they're getting older. They're not being, replaced by newer audience members, and so that's declining. It's valuable, but it's declining. What do I do? Where do I go? How do I reach this new demographic? At the same time, you have the publisher sitting like, aha, let's see, we have that demographic. This is wonderful. We're very excited about this. At the most recent Activision earnings report, they flat out say, look, we reach every month 447 million people across our titles. It's a large number of people, right, for any kind of media or entertainment company. And so if you compare it to some of the networks, that's a tremendous amount of people. So obviously the next thing for a company like Activision or EA is to sell rights to that broadcasting. So that's also, of course, where the reality kind of sets in, right? Just because we have all this enthusiasm doesn't necessarily mean that things only go well all the time, right? That's not a realistic expectation of an industry's future. And so, men much wiser and richer than me, they say the same. They say, well, look, here's all these people buying teams, all these people investing this. It's a bit of a gold rush, right? His words, not mine. But there's a sort of turmoil in that audience, in that industry, saying everybody's going to be rich, and that's, of course, never been the case. One of those issues, for instance, when it comes to investing in teams, is the inconsistency in performance. Right? So there's a very difficult equation to be made, saying if a team is successful one year, it doesn't guarantee anything for the next year. And as a brand, what you want to do is you want to be part of that story of an underdog that sort of proves everybody wrong, wins against the odds, and is part of that winning moment. That's the best moment to capture an audience, and it's the best moment to kind of associate yourself as a brand. It's very difficult to establish that just yet in esports. And so that's where we start to see a bit of a wobbly moment, right? This is not some kind of new phenomenon. This is very normal sort of setting after this massive injection of investment money and all these sort of acquisitions. All of a sudden, we start to see a little bit of turmoil. We see some shakeout. We see some consolidation. For one of the things that's kind of difficult and different to understand about esports is that compared to traditional sports and traditional teams, they rely very heavily on local advertisers, right? They have, first of all, a stadium. They have regular visits and visitors. They have an audience that comes every week with a season pass. And they have, this is a picture of where I grew up. If you're interested in that kind of stuff. All you have is like local contractors that would sponsor a team, that would have a big billboard on the side. So that kind of branding, that kind of advertising is still very much absent from the current esports offering. And so what you start to see then is sort of like a shakeout a little bit, right? Some things will hold water, some things will not. Some things will do really, really well, and you start to develop, companies start to develop a business model that's more rationalized around the experience. And that's good, right? So we're seeing all this opportunity, we're seeing all this change in the market, we see these things work out, but at the same time, we have to kind of make money at the end of the day. At the end of the day, most of us will have to go to a boss and they say, well, the ROI was X, or the thing that we did, that we spent $1 on, is now going to make us 2 in the end. So publishers are facilitating this pretty well, especially a company like Riot that sort of leads the charge in many ways, starts cleaning up its overview. This, maybe to many of you, is still a little confusing to understand and to watch. So they're making it more watchable, right? They're sort of uncluttering their visuals. They're starting to put a heavier emphasis on the minimap so that the thing that's going on the screen right now is a little easier to understand, thereby sort of broadening your addressable market. And that's good. That's where the growth's going to come from, right? If we're going to reach all those people, we have to make it easier to understand. If we're going to, as an immigrant, as a European coming into the US, for me, football is still just a magical box of rules and regulations. It's just totally meaningless. But of course, I could say the same thing probably for soccer, the other way around. So what Riot then does, of course, naturally is enter into this deal with MLB, saying like, look, we want to control the experience, of course, also alleviating some of its pressures and increasing its leverage with Twitch, saying we're going to move some of this away off platform and have our own video application that's standalone and sell rights that way, right? It's a more vertically integrated approach. They have more control over the quality, and they can really sort of address as many people as they like this way, or they can sort of maximize their reach, as well as sort of control the experience. And that's where the growth will come from in the next years, with this sort of business model rationalization where people take a real close look to how these things work and sort of manage the part that works best for them. But really drives that then ultimately, and we're 10 slides out. How many minutes do I have left? Perfect, look at that. All right, so what really drives that is the motivation of a company like Facebook, which you might have heard of, and Twitter, all sort of moving into the video space, right? Video is the whole new thing now. That has a lot to do with the type of content that has been very popular for a long time. Games will be a driving force in that, and esports will be one of the sort of spear points in that effort. That's going to change fundamentally how the size of the market in terms of ad dollars that's available, but it's also going to change the sort of lay of the land. If you are creative, if you're designing a game that is a boxed $60 thing that is sold to you through retail, those are very different design parameters than when it's a game that has to cater to an audience, has to be accessible, but also have a sense of authenticity in it, and so on. So that's what these companies are going to be looking for. And that's going to be a big change of the way that we come to learn and come to understand what gaming is in the next couple of years. If we looked at the different channels, if we compare gaming video content, so all things including esports, we see that, of course, YouTube takes the cake, Twitch not too far behind, Facebook well on its way. These are the channels that are going to define the platform and the landscape. If you switch it and say, well, what about esports? Of course, Twitch is still the biggest one. They just came out. They had, 232 billion minutes viewed yesterday. I think they had an infographic coming out. This is a tremendous platform that's doing tremendously well, but they're starting to figure out also that, even though they're not part of Amazon, they need to know very clearly what their audience is and how to monetize that audience. And so that's kind of the opportunity then, saying, okay, where do I go as a broadcaster? Where do I go as a brand or an advertiser? What's the best channel for me? How do I reach the people that actually matter to me? And then, of course, that's the larger opportunity. So it's always that one small piece that drives the bigger piece. The bigger piece here is that traditional media industries are trying to vertically integrate both their content production and distribution with their network and their hardware and their infrastructure. And so all of a sudden, you start to see these companies merging at these incredibly valuable deals, really, really large companies. And that's really all about who has the audience and who can create the content that attracts that audience. And that's where the key sort of metric comes in all of this. It's a very evasive, very qualitative one, but it's all about authenticity. You can't really buy your way into this. You have to earn this, right? And so we saw this earlier this week with PewDiePie getting a tremendous amount of criticism for some of his videos, getting dropped by Disney. And it has everything to do with, can you maintain your relationship with your audience? And do they care? Do they believe you when you say what you say? So the opportunity then in my mind is to build an authentic relationship with audiences everywhere, but you got to do it the right way. And so we heard about this earlier. Women are very much an underserved market. If you look at the traditional channels here for esports, most of it is very much male-dominated. And then, of course, in terms of age range, you'd expect Call of Duty to skew a little younger, but Counter-Strike is the same way. So shooter games skew much younger than, for instance, MOBAs. And then finally, Overwatch, and sort of part of the news here. And again, according to Twitch then yesterday, this was the most viewed new game of 2016. What makes Overwatch so interesting is that it actually appeals to a very much female audience, right? Compared to the shooter genre, and it's a little vague here with the gray, but Overwatch tends to really appeal to a much more blended audience rather than sort of a very skewed male-female audience. And so that's really sort of the punchline for me then, right? So there's a huge, tremendous amount of people out there. lots and lots of numbers. That's wonderful, right? But how do we make a business out of this? And it's really about sort of actively pursuing something that is a little bit more authentic, that is really rational in terms of its approach, and serves the audience and the customer at the end of the day, and not so much a corporate agenda outright. With that, I would love to take some questions, talk to you guys more. Thank you for your time.
Yep, we have time for a real quick couple of questions. We got, very nice. Who's got a question out there? Show of hands. Right there, we got a question right there. Hold on, we got the mic running down because we have our live stream audience and we want them to hear you.
Whenever you guys are collecting the data for all this stuff, where do you tend to collect it from? Because I just find that the industry as a whole right now is not very transparent with their numbers. So how do you go about that data collection process?
I love that question. So I started the company 6 years ago with no data at all. We didn't have a single spreadsheet with a single digit, and it's all about relationships. So we build relationships for esports, specifically with teams and platforms saying like, look, we know that you know what's going on, but you don't know what the neighbor does. And so we have formed this coalition around esports where we deal with both the platforms, the publishers, and also some of the teams. So we have a dozen or so teams contributing their streaming data, giving us sort of the back-end insight as to like how many commercials are being served, how many minutes per session, how many unique views, and so on, allowing us to build a little bit more transparency into it, but it's all about that sort of relationship with people.
Time, I think one more question. Anybody? Otherwise, I have one. How do you see brands, and what does the data show you as brands start to adopt this as a way to reach audiences and do it in a sort of more authentic and listening way versus just a megaphone way?
So that's a tough question, but because it depends on the brand. I would argue that sort of the endemics have like a no-brainer conversation, right? So that makes a lot of sense. If you are a PayPal, you should probably have your own Intel. We saw the numbers for Intel earlier. You should probably have your own tournament or your own sort of circuit. If you're a smaller brand, you can kind of co-host or co-sponsor. So it really depends on where you sit in sort of the brand ecosystem. But arguably, it's like if you can facilitate a conversation where sort of this natural talent of esport comes to the foreground, if that's the emphasis, then you can't really do wrong.
That's great. Joost, thank you very much.
Thanks.